So get us back then take us there. Take us right back to those early days when you mentioned Formula 3. You of course started on two wheels, as we know from, the last time you were on the show. I guess out of either safety or opportunity, you found yourself going to the world of four. As I understand, you started in Formula Ford, so you wouldn't have come across Eddie until your F3 days. But was it pretty much Formula Ford into F3, or was it Formula 2000 at that time as well?
Yeah, well, as you know, David, my career was like a kind of advice book on how not to do it. It was absolutely. I started in the wrong place. I started in Formula Ford 2000. I couldn't drive those things. I even drove the wrong car. I drove a car that's the most difficult one to drive. And so my introduction to the sport was inauspicious. And I had to kind of rewind and go back to the beginning and did Formula Ford, as you say. And then you meet all these characters, because I wasn't familiar with paddock at all. I mean, I've not done karting like you had. I've not known motorsport people. It sounds a bit strange to say that because my dad was in motorsport, but I'd been away from it for car racing anyway for a long time. And then eventually these people appear into your life, and you kind of work out that there's a route up. And one of the route ups would have been to go with the same team that Ayrton Senna went with, West Surrey Racing and Dick Bennett's. And then you suddenly realize there's loads of New Zealanders in Formula 3. There's all these people who've come across to go, and people from all over the world who used to come to the UK to race. And Eddie had come from Ireland, not as far as New Zealand, but he'd come and he'd set up his team, and he'd got reputation, and he was angling for any driver with cash and speed. That was the criteria. If you had cash, that was a good thing. He'd take that, but... and so I got a test with him. He gave me my first, and he in his version of events, he gave me the test of my life. The opportunity of a lifetime. And actually, I seem to remember I paid, something like two. Well, it seemed like a lot of money in those days. So I think it was $2,000 for 20 laps. Maybe it's 20 grand. I can't remember. It was a lot of money. It seemed to be in the day. And then he's never let me forget it.
Yeah, I find it fascinating, the fact that your journey, and as far as I recall, it's only yourself and your other former teammate, Jacques Villeneuve, of recent times, when I say recent times, the last 30 years, that
it's not so recent, is it?
Yeah, I know, but time passes quickly, doesn't it? All those young kids listening to this will think, oh my goodness, 30 years. But blink and suddenly you are where we are with all of the journey and the great memories. But I find it absolutely extraordinary that you had no karting background, none of all of those learnings of wheel-to-wheel racing, all of the sort of sitting round the Barbie at a kart race weekend, watching the Grand Prix, studying where you would hope to be in the future. You sort of springboard in at a relatively, let's say, late stage in your life into cars. And I don't know whether that, Damon, makes you the best driver ever to have been in Formula One, or just a very good talent that didn't need all
just
that.
Stop there. Just stop there.
Yeah, but how the hell did you and Jack manage to fill in the gaps? Because, if we look at someone like Kimi Räikkönen, another former teammate of mine, he did a bunch of karting since 2 years old. Did, I think, Formula Renault. Went to Mugello to drive a Sauber F1 car, which Mugello, as you know, is a proper scary racetrack in anything, never mind an F1. Yeah. And suddenly he's in Formula One. And I go, how the hell did he do that with so little experience?
Yeah.
So how did you do it?
Well, obviously, you've got a much more natural talent than I ever had, because he just immediately shone. And that's the same with Max, isn't it? And certain drivers have got that ability to skip over the whole boring procedure of proving yourself. I don't know what happened. Somehow they just somehow convince people that they've got something magic, and in they go, like Kimi Antonelli, I suppose. But you're right. I floundered. I floundered for ages, trying to work out how this whole thing worked with four wheels and who the people were and all this stuff. I didn't have anyone guiding me. I was doing it on my own, really. I had people who helped me, but they basically just threw me in situations and I had to sink or swim. And so coming from bikes, I never really got it. Now, I'll tell you what, there was something that happened which lit a light bulb, and it was and this is an exclusive for your podcast here, David.
Thank you.
There was a thing called charity indoor karting events that was quite popular in the 80s, 1980s. And this is a new thing. Suddenly people would go and get a disused bus garage, and set up these indoor karting events, because It has to be indoors in England because it's pouring with rain all the time. But anyway, they're fun. But they made a track out of old tyres, and the surface was incredibly smooth and slippery, and the karts couldn't really grip. But it was like racing a street circuit because you had to get very close to the barriers, and you had to. And I lost all my other drives, and so this was the only competitive opportunity I had. And there was a lot of other racing drivers who turned up. And I remember thinking, right, I haven't got anything else to drive at all. So this is it for me. I have to find out or prove to someone that I can drive. And it was an indoor karting event. And I learned something about how you drive a kart. And I think that was really key and crucial to me because I suddenly a penny dropped about how different a car was, and particularly karts have that fine level of, it's very quick. You've got to react very quickly, haven't you? And you kind of hustle it and all these things. And something clicked that helped me learn how to drive four wheels later on. And I definitely improved after that.
Yeah, the thing that I find also fascinating about that is that karting is very weight sensitive. You know, as we know in Formula One at the highest level, 10 kilos is about 0.3 of a second, be a bit less than that in the lower formulas. But you know, you were waif-like when you were a racer, but you're still 6 foot tall with, you know, size 52 feet or whatever. So, you know, how the hell
the
did
weights
you
in the
overcome?
front.
All the way in the front. That is actually a good thing. But who you say you get help from people rather than sort of management? Is there anyone you would call out that you would say that stuck with you, other than your lovely wife Georgie? Who was it that stuck with you and gave you the constant guidance?
No, I'm going to offend people here because I can't. I mean, I have very good friends who were very good to me along the way and helped me, sometimes with a little bit of money to top up the budget and so forth. But I always felt terrible about getting people to do that. And I tried to pay them back when I got to the end and had some money, but they wouldn't take it. But so there was that kind of thing, which is the moral support, I suppose you call it, as well as financial. But as far as a management, I've never really had a manager. I employed a lawyer because the contracts were tricky and you need a good lawyer to do that. So I had famously had an Irish guy called Michael Breen, who was my manager, manager in the sense that he did the deals and the negotiating. And that, but otherwise I spoke directly to the people involved. You know, it's my phone, you know, picking up the phone and speaking to whoever it was. And I came into contact quite a few times with Eddie on the way up with regarding my drive and his money. It's the way he looked at it. And so we got to know each other on that side of the fence as well, which was interesting. And I knew that you had to have your wits about you because there are drivers with budgets and they, you know, what do they want? They want you or the budget. And so, you know, you have to be a bit careful. You don't end up with no drive and losing your budget to someone else.
No, well, it's a fascinating and incredible journey, which I suspect, if I'm to try and put myself inside your mind a little bit, we find ourselves here at the later stages of our lives, reflecting back on what a journey. You know, I never imagined I would be a Grand Prix driver. It sounds you had a little bit more sort of, okay, this is what I want to do. For me, it was just a hobby that became a career. You know, I was as surprised as anyone that when I made it. That's
quite obvious to me anyway, David.
Yeah, I was just having a blast, wasn't I? Just absolutely. So it's been a hell of a ride, and that ride brings us to where we are here in Melbourne. And when we go way back,
the different. Yeah, just want to add to that, David, because I mean, actually, seriously, it was my only chance in life. That's how I saw my driving in F1. Was the only thing I was ever any good at. All my friends had got jobs, and I looked at them and they worked in advertising or whatever, and I just thought, I can't do that. I was useless at school. I mean, I just drifted through school, and it was a waste of money, a total waste of money. I shouldn't have gone, and and I just wanted to race bikes when I was younger, and so this was it for me, and I had to make it stick. And that's where that slight edge comes from, is the kind of refusal to be kicked out, which eventually I was, but I got old.
Yeah, but after a long career and
Yeah,
some incredible victories along the way, one of which was here in Melbourne. We're both in Melbourne for the start of the Formula One season. Way back in 1996, the very first race of the championship in Melbourne, we'd finished up in Adelaide, which I think you won as well, did you not? After I crashed out.
you crashed. You gave me a Grand Prix, David. I mean, I can't believe it. I'm behind you. You're getting away from me. I'm thinking, I'm puffed out here. I don't know how he's doing this, but you were quicker than me, and then you come into the pit lane and crash into the wall. And I just think, what did you do that for?
Anyway, it's etched in my memory because it cost me significant amount of finance as well, which I'd only just started to pay off my debts, having my first full year.
You were leaving. Weren't you
I was leaving
that year anyway. You went anyway. So you've got a drive lined up.
Yeah,
but your new team boss, he just signed you up, and you just crashed out leading a Grand Prix, coming in the pit lane. That was.
Okay. Well, stop rubbing it in. Stop rubbing it in. I think everyone understood I crashed. You don't have to say it three times.
I'm just saying this is explaining to the listeners the way of the Formula One. This are the things that goes through people's minds. Is they have to make decisions, big decisions on drivers. And,
Well, so therefore, you topped and tailed. So you won the last race of 95 in Adelaide in, I guess, November. And then we were back here in 1996 in March, and you won that race. That was the race where, if you remember, our buddy Martin Brundle in the Jordan sort of rolled up over the back of me.
Yeah, 96.
Yeah, down at turn 3. And therefore, I did the restart in the spare car, and then the throttle, electronic throttle broke, so I never actually finished. But you went on to win the very first race here. So fond memories of Australia all round. It's been kind to you.
Very much. Yeah, I proudly claimed I was the only driver to have won consecutive back-to-back Grand Prix in the same country. I'm not sure it stands. There's this, as you know, the stats man will put me right on that somewhere, but it was amazing. End of one season, come back to the same country and win the first one of the next season. So it kicked off very well in Australia for me there.